everyone, welcome to Briar Haus Writes. I'm Becky Parker, and today it is my honor to be able to have with us today award-winning author. He has written 7 collections of different things. He's written adult stories, he's written children's books, poetry collections, you name it. He's just so talented in everything. Matthew, welcome to our program.
Thank you so much, Becky. I'm happy to be here.
Matthew, you have an incredibly interesting last name. Tell
I
everyone
do.
what the background of Cailler is.
Oh, what's a great question. I never get to answer that. Well, without being too long-winded, yeah, it's Cailler. I'm very impressed with your pronunciation. And ironically, which is kind of a funny thing for a writer, is Cailler with a different spelling, but exact same pronunciation means notebook. And
Oh.
so I think a lot of people who took French in school, like, now it's not done as much, but I hear it every now and then, but that would be spelled Cahier. And so I think it's kind of funny for a writer to have that name. But Cahier with the, Cailler, I think our family originated from quail hunters,
Oh.
and Kai means quail in French. This is what I've heard.
Well,
Yeah.
Matthew, tell us about yourself. What
Oh,
led you
thank
to
you.
writing?
Yeah, I think I came to it. A lot of people have these incredible stories where they want to be writers from the time they're born. And I did not have that. It kind of developed like a tropical storm for me, like kind of going up, category one, category two, and it
Hmm.
just got eventually pretty big. But it all kind of happened by accident. I was obsessed with stand-up comedy, as a little kid, like probably age 8, 9. I remember my grandfather watching VHSs of Rodney Dangerfield and Eddie Murphy and all these people that I really loved. I loved
Hmm.
seeing my grandfather laugh, and I probably shouldn't have been exposed to that material at that age, but I just remember thinking, oh, I like storytelling. It seemed like it was so natural. It just seemed like the person was really funny, and they are, but you don't think about the craft that goes into it and how you refine a joke and how you trim fat and all those things. So I started trying to write jokes for stand-up comedy or just for myself.
Hmm.
And that ended up kind of parlaying into some funny essays in high school. I had a really sweet high school English teacher named Mrs. Stanton who um, kept like sending in my pieces, and she would just like without my knowledge send in stories to competitions. And I had one that was like a humorous essay that placed and won something. And I remember just thinking how sweet it was that she did that. And, I had never thought I could write. I really struggled in high school, just even thinking like, how do people write a book? How do people write a book report? Like all of it stressed me out, frankly. And I was not very good at spelling. It was just not something I ever saw happening. But I
Hmm.
was creative and I did like the idea of telling stories. I think that was always there. So yeah, without, the stand-up comedy piece and Mrs. Stanton and kind of her like wiggling in and doing some fun stuff behind the scenes, all that kind of gave me the courage to do the college newspaper. And there I had a really cool editor named Shamir Koloff who he kind of pushed me to write whatever I wanted. And people would come up to me and be like, hey, I really like that funny piece you wrote. And I was dedicating like a lot of time to writing for the college newspaper, ignoring my actual classes. And I had like kind of an epiphany at that moment and said, hey, if you're doing something where time passes so easily, you should kind of think about this. And writing never left me then. It was always something I thought about, writing a book, writing a poem. Um, I ended up going to grad school for it when I was 25 because I was a classroom teacher for a while and I just I didn't have the time to teach or the time to write with all the teaching. So I was trying to fit in a poem or a piece of flash on the weekends, and it was never what I wanted to do. I wanted to see, hey, what would happen if I really dedicated myself to this?
And how do you find that that is working out with time commitments with your writing?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a bit of a changing relationship with writing with me and time now. It's before I was extremely wedded to, 1,500 words a day if I was writing fiction
Wow.
and I was working on a novel or, I was trying to write like a poem a day. And tried to see, at the end of a year, if I had 365 poems, were there like 60 that were worth kind of going back and really working on, that kind of thing. So I had an intense work ethic. Then, I got married. I take care of my parents a little bit these days. So there's just a lot of time commitments and your relationship, I think, for writers to know that it's okay to kind of change your relationship with writing depending on what's going on in your life, as long as you're showing up. So yeah, these days I started a new project and I'm just kind of being gentle with myself and doing 500 words a day right now to kind of get things going. And yeah, because I teach a lot and I'm writing a lot and there's just a lot of commitments. I don't want to let go of the rope. I
Mhm.
think that is what happens, that it's always the first thing to go, and I don't want that to happen. So I try to protect it in the morning, get up, have a cup of coffee, and have it be the first thing I do pretty much all day. That's the goal every day.
What makes you drawn to a particular topic? Because you've covered so many different things in your writing, especially when you write for children. So,
Yeah.
what are the topics that just draw you in that you feel like that would be interesting to explore?
Yeah, it always seemingly changes for me. Love stories are at the heart of everything I do. I think every story I've ever written is a love story in some way. We
Mhm.
tend to think of love stories as like extremely, boy, girl, and this kind of thing, but it's like really not. There's a lot of explorations of love, right? And
True.
yeah, you can love an animal. You can be really, in love with art or what have you, or a love that is no longer there and it's trying to be renewed. So I'm always kind of uh, working in that. I feel like there is those themes of like unexpected friendships, love, loss. Those are always at the core of my work, um, whether I know it or not. I sometimes write and I go, oh, I've written something kind of novel for me. And then I'm like, no, I kind of went back into what I do. But you're right. Like I've written, for kids, I wrote a book about a beetle who wants to be a ladybug because he sees the way they're adored by humans and learns then that no, he's actually quite happy being a beetle and he misses his way of life. And so that to me is kind of an essence of loving yourself, right? So there's a love story there. I just see it kind of that way. There's always an exploration of love and loss. And, sometimes you don't know if you love yourself or what's happening. So you need to go through some stories to figure out kind of, hey, what do I want out of this? Like right now, the book I'm working on is very much a self-love book, is what I've come to learn. I didn't know it going in, but it's a woman who's gone through quite a bit and she's kind of reinventing herself and learning to love herself again in a strange way.
Will that be like a novel or a short
Yeah,
story?
I think it'll be a novel. I think it might be a short novel. Yeah, might like rewrite on the border of novella and novel. Yeah, and then the last book I wrote was a novel, and that's with my agent now. So we'll see what happens there. That's about, it's kind of I thought it was more like YA just because the narrator is 13 years old. But
Wow.
it's what my agent has decided, and I totally agree, is that it might not be exactly that. It's again, yes, it's a young narrator, but the themes are very adult, and the story is like can be read by adults, or we've kind of created genre sometimes as a marketing thing, and it sometimes is the death of art in some ways because it goes through so many compressions and oh, go over here, you're go in this box, and I don't think that's particularly good for an artist to have to deal with.
Well, when you are writing, there any challenges that you find that you're experiencing? Like when it comes to researching a particular character and maybe their geology or where they're going to be, their geography, any of that? And if you do overcome those challenges, share how you've done that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, yes, I do. I mean, I do. I don't want to do research sometimes because, especially in the drafting process, it takes you out of what you're doing. So, my advice to anyone listening would be you can go back and do research. But when I was writing the book about the 13-year-old narrator, it's set in 1955 rural Indiana. I did
Oh,
not grow up in 1955. Um, So my mother was kind of the source that I used, and my aunt, because they had grown up in the Midwest around that time period.
Gotcha.
So that's always good, but it's not like foolproof. So I would ask them questions like, what was your phone number growing up? Like, what was that like? It wasn't like the same ones we have now, these long numbers, right? And they were kind of like, no, it wasn't. It was shorter. And, how much did like a burger cost and things like that. But these are things that when I was writing, I would like not want to take my eyes off the road, so to speak. You have an objective you're trying to get through in that day. It's like this girl maybe loses her bike or what have you. And it's like, I want to fulfill that arc. I don't want to be bogged down with the price of a sandwich. So I
Right.
would bold it, or that was kind of my move, is just like, I know I'm going to have to revisit this. So I'll just bold it. And then on your second read through, you just go through and you find all the bolded stuff. You make sure, like, okay, was the price correct? Was that phone number correct? Were cardboard boxes. I remember were those invented. I just like couldn't remember. I was like, do people have cardboard boxes? I don't think I've seen a movie where someone had a cardboard box in the 50s. And then you have someone else read it too, because they're going to find other stuff. There was a woman that read it and said, I don't know if people use the term sweatshirt in the 1950s. It's like, oh, okay, cool. That's a great, catch. Let's make it a sweater. Let's like just get rid of that problem because you don't want anything that kind of trait takes you out of the dream you're creating. And sometimes that can happen. So, um, yeah, that's kind of my advice is to write through it. Don't like not pay attention to it and just say, I don't care about research, but you don't have to care about it the first go around. And it's kind of the truth for all things, first draft, I think. It's just, if there's a verb choice where you're like, it's not the best. Right now, I'm going through that and I'm like, this is not great writing, but it's getting me through the plot. You have to drag yourself through what the events of the story are first, before you can go back and correct it.
When you are writing your characters, are you in your first books, are you thinking about them possibly having a different story in another book? Like if has anyone said, "Hey, I'd like to follow up on this character. Are you going to make a new book?"
Hmm.
Another story. Have you ever thought about that when you're doing your characters initially?
Yeah, it's intriguing. I mean, it's initially no. I kind of just create them and they have their 15 minutes of fame and, it's over. Like, I don't think I'm going to ever see you again. I feel bad, but that's the way I think. Um, it's funny though, because I have written um, two novels now that are like done. One was published, one is hopefully coming out, and I'm writing this third. And all three of those novels have been born out of a short story that didn't quite work.
Oh.
Yeah, I have never sat down and said, like, I'm going to write a novel. It was always, oh, that short story, that's dying to be a novel. That's what happened there. Like that's why it didn't work. There's either too big for the container, too many characters, covers too much of a time period. So I'd write like a 50-page short story, and it was just a very clunky, it's a weird length. It's very hard to place a 50-page short story. It's done. I mean, you see it sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, I don't think of it as like the traditional short story once you're at 50 pages. So I kind of look at it and go like, what did I do here? Like, and is this expandable? And with the first novel, yeah, it was totally the right call. Once it took shape as a novel, I was really happy just to get that monkey off my back, so to speak, because a lot of people ask you when you write, especially I wrote a lot of short fiction, poetry, kids books, and people are like, when's the novel coming out? And people are very much, sadly, they're kind of, they see you as like a different kind of writer if you don't commit to a novel. And that's ridiculous, but it's something that was weighing on me. And I didn't want to write a novel just to get it off my back. I wanted a novel that kind of came out organically. And I wrote a short story called Homework, and it had some nice elements,
Mm-hmm.
but I realized I sent it to a buddy and I said, "Hey, why doesn't this work? Like, I don't understand what I did wrong here." Usually, pretty like I can figure out a short story. He goes, "Oh, you tried to shove a novel into a short story." That's what happened. I was like, "Oh, that's really good advice," but I just put it in a drawer for like 3 years then and didn't look at it because that scared me. So yeah,
Wow.
it's true that I've never thought of them coming back, but there are short stories I've written where people go, "Oh, I'd love that to be fleshed out," or like, "What do you think happens to this character down the road?" Or, but those are good things. If readers are asking questions, you don't necessarily want to answer them because if I went back and tried to answer it, there's a good chance I could ruin the whole thing. If you nail a short story, you have to be very careful if you want to make it larger just because it's popular. Like Shirley Jackson didn't try to make The Lottery a novel. Those kind of things like these, she probably could have. There was a lot of attention and nowadays, I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of money in things, and money can kind of be not the best motivator. So I think in Hollywood, especially in TV, they're like, oh, well, that could actually, if we reboot,
Hmm.
we remake The Sandlot or something, it'll get a new generation of kids. And it's like, yeah, but the little kids, they'll watch an older movie and be very attached to it. I've seen that happen many times with The Goonies or what have you. You don't need to remake The Goonies. And so. Um, I think there's a little bit of truth there, unless it's really speaking to you. And then you really are like, you just love those characters and you see a new adventure for them, like by all means, go for it.
Kind of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory became
Mm-hmm.
Wonka, and they're both very
Correct.
different, but they're both incredibly good movies in their own right.
You're
Um,
right.
I'm saying this because I have grandkids and they absolutely love both. So Matthew,
That's
would you
great.
read some of your work for us?
Sure.
We'd love to hear you.
Yeah, I'm gonna read. It's kind of an interesting one. I've decided. So I was published. I had a short story come out in Coolest American Short Stories, and I thought I would read the first. It's an epistolary story, which was kind of new for me. And so I'm going to read the first two letters, one from each character, called Hearts. August 1st, Landy Henderson, 4800 Foster Road, Space 22, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73129. Dear Mr. Landy Henderson, I hope you don't mind me writing to you. Landy is a weird name. How'd you get it? People call me McCrae. I'm an inmate in the Dalhart unit in Hartley County, Texas. I've been here a long time, over 27 years. I came to know you through your music. In the library, we have a pretty big selection of music, and your CD was on the shelf. It seemed like a small budget CD because right inside the flap was your address. Did you produce it yourself? What are you up to right now? Are you out getting drunk, sipping a cold one with a toothpick between your lips? That sounds nice. I could still see the cover of your CD in my mind's eye, a lonely highway with a cornfield in the background. I have to see a lot with my mind's eye these days because I'm blind. Complications from diabetes. A lovely woman at the library, Eloise, helps me write these letters. She's an angel. I never wanted to learn Braille, too old for those tiny bumps. Eloise is very good to me. Like I said, an angel. I'm on death row and I got about 3 months left. I'll die on October 30th. I go back and forth about it. Sometimes I feel relief because I know when and how I'll die. Sometimes I'm scared, though. What if it hurts? They say it doesn't, but they've never gone through it, have they? I just wanted to let you know your music keeps me going. I know the words to all your songs. Hell, I think I could go on tour with you if I didn't have that upcoming appointment. Eloise lets me listen to your music on a headset because I'm a little hard of hearing, and she really cranks it. She's my best friend in here. The song I like most is Billy. It reminds me of when I was a boy. My best memory of my parents, well, my mom, is my mama giving me a bath. Just splashing in the tub in Little Rock, Arkansas, playing with a little submarine, smelling the soapy water and waiting for her to wash my hair. That was my favorite thing, the way she'd lather up my then thick hair and make sure I shut my eyes real hard. She'd run the spigot, and once the temperature was approved, she'd fill up this blue pitcher, the same pitcher we used for lemonade, actually, and tilt my head back. Keep 'em shut good, baby, she'd say. She'd always say it just like that. And I would. The water would feel so fresh, and it'd slide down my head and face, and I'd feel the suds on my nose and cheeks. It was like a waterfall, I guess. If there's a heaven, and I get in, I hope my mama's up there, and I hope to be little again. Be good. Clark McCrae, 13367. This is my ID number. P.O. Box 454, Dalhart, Texas, 79022. P.S. Do you like interesting facts? I do. Here's one. Besides lovers, St. Valentine is patron saint of beekeepers, epileptics. August 5th, Clark McRae, 1336762, P.O. Box 454, Delhart, Texas, 79022. Howdy, McRae. Thanks for your letter. You're right about a lot of things. One, I did produce that CD myself. Can't believe it made it there. I have few more CDs now. No one really knows who I am, but I make enough money to have a trailer and support myself. Landy is a weird name. My mom wanted to name me Larry. My dad wanted to name me Andy, so they went with Landy. It was pretty much the only time they ever compromised. Three, I wrote Billy for my daughter, Layla. She lives with her mom in Houston. Do you have any kids? I like what you said about getting your hair washed as a kid. My favorite childhood memory was when my dad would come by and pick me up on his motorcycle and take me to the river. My song Interstate is based on that part of my life. I feared the speed of the bike and the noise too, but I didn't want my dad to know that, so I'd wrap my arms around him as tight as I could. My fingers would dig into his belly, and many times I'd find a hole in his shirt and rub his hairy skin with my fingers. He tried so hard to get sober, but it never happened. Ended up dying in a car crash when I was 12. I always tell people if you want to be a country singer, God will give you a country song life. I try to edit my life best I can, though. When I think of him, I think of the Harley, the wind, the sun on my neck. Just edit life into little moments. Do you do that? It's too hard for me to say anything worthwhile regarding your big date. I don't know how folks can put people to death and not die a little bit themselves. Is there anything you really want before October 30th? I know these questions are stupid, but it's late and I'm not much of a letter writer. Yours, Landy Henderson, 4800 Foster Road, Space 22, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73129. P.S. Had no idea St. Val had more to him than chocolates and roses.
Now I want to know, how did he respond back? Did he write back?
Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty cool. It's a very cool anthology. I'm lucky to be in it. So many cool writers, and I thought it would be a fun one to read.
Well, I have to say, those stories are just those epistles are beautiful, and they bring forth such a tragedy on both sides. And I love that part where you said edit the parts that you can live with it.
Yeah, I think there's a big part of life is, it's very fun to write letters on behalf of other people. We are most free when we write letters. I had a friend, Sophronia Scott. I still have a friend, Sophronia Scott, who used to say when she had writer's block, she would write a letter or recommend other writers to write letters. And it's true. Like if you write an email to a friend, you don't have writer's block at all. It just comes flying out. It's very, very easy. And there's a joy to that with letter writing and story. So right now I'm working on I was talking to Niles Reddick, who I think you know, right?
I do. I do know him.
Yeah, he's such a great guy. And I was lucky enough to speak with his class. And last year I had just a lot happening in my life. My parents got ill, and there was lots of
Mhm.
appointments and that kind of thing. And like we were saying earlier, I didn't want to stop writing, but I had to change my relationship with it, and I had to pivot to shorter things. So I started writing a ton of micros and prose poems and flash, and I love that in general. So I said, you know what? I've never dedicated like a long chunk of time to it, but I pretty much just wrote those from like the fall of 23 to the end of 2024. So I had like, maybe 15 months worth of writing micros, and I fell in love with them. I was lucky enough to get a lot of them published, and one of them won a pushcart prize. And so I was like really thrilled with, it was just so fun to do that and to like win an award that I had dreamed about and read all these volumes and never thought it was possible. So, it shows that you stretch yourself in kind of different ways. You don't know what's out there, but yeah, I've assembled a collection of little micros, some mostly surreal,
Mhm.
called The Taste of Stars, and I'll read a few of the micros um, from it. So these were published in Wigleaf. I'm reading off their site. It's called Old Friend. My heart and I got into a fight, and it left my body one morning. It moved to the Inland Empire east of Los Angeles and opened its own liquor store called Aortas. Outside, a banner hung and waved in the wind, advertising the best sandwiches in town, the coldest beer, and the winningest lotto tickets. I drove by often and spied on my heart through an open window on the west side of the store. My heart usually sat behind the counter, reading A Raisin in the Sun. Around noon most days, Christy Collins, my childhood crush, would come out from the back of the store and kiss my heart. They would tell each other soft stories that didn't reach the window, and they would laugh a lot. They would share grape sodas with two straws and play with their cat. One day I had the courage to enter the store. My heart didn't look up even when the ding dong sounded. I laid a cold beer and some licorice next to the register and asked for a lotto scratcher. My heart said it was so good to see me and that it hoped I would win big. When I got to my car, I blurred off the silver dust with my car key and discovered I had won a free ticket, which would give me an excuse to return to the store. It would be nice to see my heart again in the morning. Thank you. And this one was the Pushcart Prize winner. It is not surreal, but it's kind of on the fence if it'll be in the surreal collection. I think it'll probably be in another collection that's more that honors it more, But the
Mhm.
other one is surreal. This would not fit on a bumper sticker. My son did not make the honor roll at Happy Hills Middle School. He is, however, dominating Call of Duty. My son did secure his first kiss last week. Monica is her name. I overheard him tell his friend. He said the kiss was fire and kind of wet. I caught him drinking Chablis on the back porch the other weekend. He apologized and said he wanted to look cool. I told him Chablis is not cool and that I only keep it around for my stepmother, Barbara. He says he wants to be a truck driver when he grows up because he'll see a lot of America, but not that many people. When he was young, I told him that all creatures were beautiful, and soon after he tried to pet a bee. He calls me bro at least twice a week. He cries at Pixar films. He tells me to buy protein powder for his muscles. He still sleeps with his nightlight on because he says the stars on the ceiling help him fall asleep faster. He doesn't say he loves me much these days, but on certain mornings when he trains early for football, he brews coffee for me so it's ready when I wake up. He places a mug with 3 big spoonfuls of brown sugar inside it right next to the fresh pot. Sometimes he leaves a note. Thank you.
In 100 years from now,
Mm,
what do you think you would like your legacy to be? When people see your
what a
work, Mathieu Cailler, what do you want them to think about for you?
wow. That's an incredibly deep question. It's something that has kept me up at night many times, actually, thinking about where am I in 100 years and what legacy is, in terms of we all are kind of specks of dust among other specks of dust on this planet. It's just such a massive undertaking. And what does it mean, But I guess a legacy for me would be, just for a young person to come across my books and have it inspire them and have them say, "Oh wow, like I can't wait to get home tonight and get in bed and read another story." I think that would just be incredibly meaningful to me. I think to have that attention, that I gave to so many authors like Raymond Carver and um, Grace Paley. Those were authors, that Lucille Clifton, that I just wrote. I drove home from parties when I was in my 20s, and my first thought was like, man, I can't wait to get in bed and read a few poems, and I can't
Hmm.
wait to read another story or read another chapter of this book. So just to have that person's attention, let it be like an escape from life for a little while. I think um, I don't think I'm saving the world or anything writing. I think it more of it like I'm a cookie for a lot of people after a long day. Like there's value to that. There's value in being a cookie and an escape, a glass of wine or what have you, and someone can kind of have a healthy experience reading and get to know the world around them more. I think that's what fiction and poetry and flash and all these things they do so well is they give you a glimpse into other people's lives. And if you get a lot of glimpses into other people's lives, you'll tend to be a better person because you'll have a lot, you kind of create empathy. When you read a story about a prisoner on death row or an inmate on death row, you learn about this person and you tend to care for this person. And when you read the story about the bumper sticker, that resonated with like a lot of parents. I remember when it was on social media, you have a lot of people say like, "Hey, there's so much more to life than grades." It almost becomes silly, right? People posting a thing that says, "My daughter made the honor roll and driving around town." It's like, well, nobody really cares about your biology grade. Like, what kind of person are you? What you're gonna have to
Your
bring that
character.
with. Yeah, what's your character? What do you like? Trying to pet bees and making coffee for other people. Those are kind of building blocks of life. Like, what kind of human being are you on a deeper level? And so I think there is a gift in that. And I think that's, if people can read my work in 100 years and pull away and say, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. I never thought about what a divorce was like for this guy or what it was like for this 13-year-old girl in rural Indiana. Um,
Hmm.
and how she kind of takes a weird path and makes an unexpected friend. And, you know, that whole thing of good people can be bad, bad people can be good. We're always a little bit of everything. I think that's a big lesson I'd like to put out there.
I think that's a very good legacy, and I wish you the best in that.
Thank
Um,
you so much, Becky.